and we are recorded on Facebook Live. So once again, welcome to No Longer Invisible, No Longer Silent, being produced and shown through Speaking in the Key of We. We have with us today our guest, Dr. Maya Cummings, who is here to talk to us about the late Congressman of Baltimore, Elijah Cummings, as she shares with us his book, We're Better Than This. It's a great read. I invite each and every one of you, after you hear Dr. Cummings talk about it, that you run out and buy it. It speaks so much to everything that we are experiencing now. So I enjoyed the read, and that's going to be a part of our show today. We have, along with Dr. Maya and Reverend Janet Garland Marlis and Melissa McQueen Simmons, my co-host, and my other co-host, Lafayette Jefferson, who are all here today to engage in our conversation today. So I'm not going to belabor us long. The reason why we're here is to hear about this wonderful book. And I think I gave just a little snippet of Dr. Maya. I'm going to let her introduce herself to us and welcome her to our show this afternoon. Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank you for having me on your show. I love the title because that is absolutely correct. And I also want to thank you for highlighting We're Better Than This, My Fight for the Future of Our Democracy by the late Congressman Elijah Cummings. It's a book about life, it's about love, it's about loss, it's about leadership, and it's certainly about liberty. And so, this is a book that you have to pick up to understand the times that we're in. My late husband, Elijah Cummings, was the chairman of the Government Oversight and Reform Committee. He had a leading role in Congress in terms of overseeing the federal government, particularly the White House and all of the agencies that it actually represented. And so he had a hand in steering all of the investigations that were coming out of this administration. Everything from what was happening at the Department of Energy to what was happening at the Department of Homeland Security with children and families at the border, to what was happening in Secret Service with the security clearances for Jared and Ivanka and their use of personal emails to do public business, which they did. And so, and also the U.S. Census, the racist question that they tried to include in the U.S. Census. He, of course, had a hand in debunking and challenging in the courts many of the lawsuits that you've seen come down over this last year with regards to all of these issues, including Trump's finances and personal tax returns. Had been started in those investigations had been started and overseen by my late husband, Elijah Cummings. So he had, needless to say, he had an up close and personal view of Donald Trump and the Trump administration. Donald Trump, interestingly enough, after the 2016 election, my husband was known as a bipartisan person. He didn't think it was about party. It was about the bigger picture. How could we help people? How could we make sure that our country was working and doing the right thing on behalf of its people? And so he had a long track record of working across the aisle, working with Republicans. In fact, he was a friend of Mark Meadows, who is the current chief of staff for Donald Trump. And so, when Trump won the election, despite all of the terrible things that happened during the 2016 election cycle, Elijah and I went to Trump's inauguration, actually against, the effort that was being put forward by the late Congressman John Lewis, who was leading a boycott at that time. Elijah went to John Lewis and asked him for his permission to attend, and John Lewis said, sure. And so we went, and afterwards we went to the luncheon, and Elijah reached out. We went up to the president and introduced ourselves, and Elijah asked for a meeting, a personal meeting, so he could talk to the president about the high cost of prescription drugs and how Americans across the country were being price gouged by these unscrupulous drug companies, how the prices were basically increasing 600% per year, et cetera. So Elijah went. They had a good meeting, according to Elijah, and as soon as they stepped out of the meeting, Donald Trump lied. Donald Trump said that Elijah said that he would go down in history as the best president ever for the country of America. And Elijah said, no, that is not what I said. I said that if you serve all of the people, Mr. Trump, if you serve all of the people, you could go down in history as one of the best. And so here we are. Elijah knew that Donald Trump was somebody who was perfectly fine engaging in corruption. He knew that Donald Trump was somebody perfectly fine disregarding our Constitution, someone who was happy to trample over our laws and our democratic norms. And because of what he saw at the border, he was concerned about several things. One, he considered Donald Trump not only unfit for the office temperamentally and value-wise, but two, he considered Donald Trump a threat to our humanity, meaning that, you know, he firmly believed that given the chance, he would not only do what he was doing to those kids and families at the border in terms of separating them with no plans to get back together, that he would expand the cruelty to other communities across the country. And then thirdly, he believed that if Donald Trump managed to get another term in office by hook or by crook, and I emphasize the word crook, that we would no longer have a democracy, that he would tear it apart brick by brick. And so here we are, finding ourselves, dealing with a Mr. Trump who refuses to concede an election.
I found your book extremely exciting, and you're so spot on. As I was reading the chapters, the one thing that there are several things that popped out, but given the fact that we are in this election season where the fake news was shared about fraud with the voting, one of the things that Elijah talks about is his moral compass. I'm using moral compass, but he talks about the president not having moral integrity. And he also mentions the fact that a lot of his concern was around voting. So he talked about the 20 census and how the question of citizenship was put on, and really the question or the intent to try to put that as a question in the 2020 census was to impact negatively the voting process. So, there are critical things that the late Elijah Cummings alludes to for us that really we are living out right now as we see. And one of the stories that he shares is the story of his thrust for healthcare. Talk a little bit more about how his work, his concern for reducing the cost of prescription drugs and the access to healthcare was really his mantra, and why. Would you like to tell us about that
Oh,
story?
he starts the book with a story about his grandfather, whom Elijah did not know, but whom he heard stories about through his own dad. And there was one story in particular that just resonated with his dad till the day he died, and also resonated with Elijah. Elijah's grandfather was a preacher. And so he was preaching at the church one day and he fell ill. And the parishioners, and by the way, they were in South Carolina. That's where Elijah's from, Manning, South Carolina. And they, or actually, his parents were from. Elijah was born in Baltimore. And they took his grandfather to the house and they called the doctor. And two doctors showed up, two white doctors, one older, one younger. And they went in to see Elijah's grandfather. And they didn't notice that when they came out of the room and stepped out onto the porch, they didn't notice that Elijah's father, who was a little boy at the time, was sitting on the porch. And so he overheard them talking. And the younger white doctor said, if we don't get him to a hospital soon, he's going to die. He needs such and such procedures. And the older white doctor said, don't worry about it. He's just a nigger. And that lived with Elijah's father for the rest. It haunted him. It haunted him that there would be such utter and total disregard for the health and livelihood and life of a man because he was considered, of the lowest caste. And I just got finished reading Isabel Wilkerson's book. And so, Elijah carried that. He saw in his lifetime how different people were treated differently by the system, particularly in the healthcare system. He saw story after story of his constituents and certainly people in his families who confronted the same kinds of health discrimination that happens in our system. And then, of course, he fought a long-term battle with cancer himself, and he knew the cost of some of these drugs. And he often lamented and wondered what was happening to the people that didn't have health care, that comes down, they come down with, these conditions like type 2 diabetes and cancer, these drugs that, are so expensive. And he knew that, if they couldn't afford the drugs, that they died. And so he was determined to do everything in his power, including dealing with Mr. Donald Trump, to try to work on behalf of all of the American people to help them gain access to life through quality and lower cost prescription drugs.
Oh, Glancy, you're muted. Hello, everyone.
Hi, Melissa. Glancy, we can't hear you.
Okay, well, I'm thankful for Melissa keeping track of me. Thank you so much for sharing that. As I said, the book just has so many nuggets in it for us. And you hit on the other one where he was setting up the investigation to go after Big Pharma. And once again, that plays out into our daily lives now. Any thoughts from our panelists who may have experienced what the drug industry has, how the drug industry may have impacted you as you may need medical prescription drugs or access to healthcare?
Yes, this is Reverend Garner Mullins. Thank you, Dr. Cummings, for sharing that valuable information from your husband's book and from his life. Being a person that has some medical challenges, I would say, my experience has been one of a challenge and continues to be a challenge because I can remember some of the medications that I take. Looking at my insurance in 2019, for example, one medication, and I have to get a 90-day supply, was $131. In 2021, that same medication for 90 days went to $646. And so my question to the insurance company was, how in the hell can this go for 131 to 600 over a 12-month period? And there was the person I spoke to, the representative, was quite flippant. She said, well, that's just the way things are. Things go up. And I said, so you are trying to push me to go to Canada and other places to get my medication because of the cost. And so I could go on and on about my experience with the big pharma and drug companies about the costs of drugs. But thanks be to God, there was an organization called the Lilly Foundation, Lilly Cares. And so they will allow persons who have various medications that are not able to afford those medications financially to make an application, and they will review it and see whether or not they will approve it. And they approved my medication in 2020. And so I was able to continuously get my medication so that I will be able to be here with my family and with you all. However, if I had not pursued it, another avenue, I would not have been able to take the medicine. So I am in total agreement that there is a racket with Big Pharma. There's been collusion with our current person occupying 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue with the pharmacies because of money. They have put profits before people. And so I have seen that, and I will continue to speak out about it from a personal experience.
Yeah, Reverend Garner Mullins, that's incredible that and great that you were able to follow through and basically save your own life by finding the help that's out there. So, thank you for being persistent, but you're absolutely correct. They will raise these prices 600%, 1,000%, and they don't care. And they do it for pure profit reasons. It's greed.
Lafayette, what are your thoughts?
You're on mute.
You can unmute. You can unmute. Can you unmute? There you go.
I feel like lip reading expert, but all right. So I'm a veteran and a federal employee, and so my my drug costs are affordable. Actually, it's rare that I bring anything out of pocket, but I do see what's happening, and I'm very cognizant of its effect on not only the people but on the nation, because it's one of the major contributors to foreclosure, the bankruptcy, and it's major when it comes to widen the income gaps between the rich and the poor. And I'm seeing it as something that's actually placing the United States as a country at risk, because it opens us up as that income gap widens. It opens up our it places our national security as a risk, and makes us more vulnerable to people that want to do bad things. But at the core, we got to do the right things for our people, and it has to be a holistic overall approach. Has to be an overall approach to that, because if you're doing the right things, a lot of times people will do the right things. But if you're only showing greed, it's going to breed more greed.
Okay, thank you for that comment. And Reverend Janet had her hand up, so she has something that she wants to add to the conversation.
The other thing we want to be cognizant of is that the cost of prescription drugs, yes, it is a overall concern for all persons, but persons of Black and brown color are more likely to be affected adversely in a more greater capacity than persons that are not Black and brown. I know of persons in Charlotte, Mecklenburg that have to make decisions and had to make decisions and continue to make decisions as to whether or not I'm gonna get my medicine, or whether I'm gonna pay my bills, my rent, or whether I'm gonna buy groceries for me and my children. And so what I will do, I will buy the groceries and not get the medicine. And it is unfortunate that they have to make those decisions like that, because the medicine, like mine, went from 131 to 600. Well, fortunately for me, I did pursue other avenues. But for persons, and I always say this, when you don't know what you don't know, then you're not going to be in a position to go out there and see that there's something else out there. Fortunately for me, I was able to tell the young lady, that the mother, that there are opportunities out there in the city that she could pursue that could help her with her medicine, such as going through social service to get Medicaid, and such as going on the internet and finding other organizations that are giving money to help persons with their medicine. But no one should have to decide whether I'm going to eat or whether I'm going to live.
Mhm.
And so we have to be cognizant of that, and we have to roll up our sleeves and boots on the ground to do what we can to make sure that our voices are heard, that we stand up, that we speak out.
Thank you for that. You raised a very important concern for our community. And as you say, if people don't know, then they go without information. So what are some of the ways or organizations, nonprofit or even within our religious institutions, can we be gain the knowledge that we are able to share how persons can access when they cannot get it through the normal channel or when it's more expensive?
One thing I would say is that the churches need to collaborate together. There's a lot of resource information out there, but a lot of times African American churches work in silos and they're territorial about sharing information. And there's an organization called the North Carolina Council of Churches here in North Carolina. And even though those churches may not be all Black and brown churches, but those churches have resources, information that we as an organization, as Black and brown churches, can take back to our communities and to our churches to help our parishioners. And so we need to get past this big I and little U and get past holding all information and holding everything quietly, because we were raised, a lot of us were raised, what goes on in the house stays in the house. Even though you're dying and going and being hungry, you don't go out there and tell people you don't have any food. Well, as my husband always says, a closed mouth does not get fed. So when we share our needs and be transparent and be authentic, then we will be able to glean what is out there for us. But we have to know that being prideful and being hungry and being homeless is not the way to go. So to answer your question, Reverend Glency, collaboration, sharing, as I've done with people about organizations and opportunities for their medicine and for food, sharing and caring is the key.
Okay, thank you for that. Anyone else wants to offer any comments as we continue to talk about this wonderful book today? We are better than this.
I just want to say that it shouldn't be that hard. We shouldn't be having to piece together information here and there. This needs to be a part of the law of the land. It needs to be a part of a universal healthcare initiative where we have systematic and affordable access to quality prescription drugs as a part of a universal healthcare plan. And so, I am just prayerful that we are moving in that direction with this new administration, that we can get to a point where people don't have to scramble here and there to figure out, where they can get access to something, where the information is systematically provided to people as they need it. And nobody goes without. We can do better and we can be better. As Elijah says, we're better than this. And so, I'm glad that that some of these programs are out there, but many of them are hard to find and then difficult to apply for sometimes.
I think I have some other persons who are trying to make a comment. We have Reverend Rochella Cunningham. Did you want to ask a question or make a comment? Please feel free to do so. Your mic is open. Let's see. She's trying to get her mic to work. Okay. So thank you so much for that, Reverend Mullins. You're absolutely correct. And there's so many, there's so much information out there. And I totally agree with Dr. Maya that it shouldn't be that difficult. And it is our hope that with the new administration that, universal health care can get passed. The expansion of Medicaid can get moved forward in states that are still not pushing it, which is happening in our state of North Carolina, that we will be able to see a raise in wages in order that families may be able to do best for their families. And, we're still in an election season right now. All roads lead to Georgia. And in order for us to ensure the possibilities of a universal health care, increase in the minimum wage, all of those things, we need to make sure that we can flip the Senate this January the 5th. So if we have anyone on this out in Facebook land that are listening, that are living in the state of Georgia, we need you to show up like you've never shown up before and vote. Early voting begins December 14th. The day of the election is January the 5th. You have the ability to register. I think you have to have your registration done if you have not registered by December the 5th. And I'll get that correct if it's not correct before the end of the show. But that's what's going to ensure us with a shift in the Senate. The current chair of the Senate has several bills on his desk that are not being entertained. Some of them have to do with our voting rights. A lot of them have to do with our health care. A lot have to do with what's going on with our families as they continue to experience hardship as a result of COVID. So we need to have a shift. The president-elect and vice president-elect cannot get the things that they want to accomplish done, all of the work that they want to get done, without the cooperation of the House and the Senate. So just a little bit of our history and why voting is so key. Thank you so much for that. I see that my co-host Melissa is here live and ready to jump in and assist with any questions or statements that she may have. Melissa?
Hi, I want to first thank Dr. Cummings for being here, and it's great to see Reverend Garner Mullins again. Well, I didn't get to see you last. We got to hear you, but it's good to hear you. And welcome back, Lafayette. We miss you. I know you're doing school and stuff. So I have not had the pleasure of reading the book yet, but I know how such a phenomenal man he is. So you're Dr. Cummings. I want to make sure I get your title correctly. Okay.
Mhm.
So Dr. Cummings, according to Google, you are in Generation X as myself. And that's what Google say. If not, then just let me know.
Is 50 years old Generation X?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, well then I'm in Generation X.
Yes. And yeah, because my wife, she's 50. So yeah.
Okay.
So what other issues do you think your book lift up that speaks to our generation and also the generation behind us? Because a lot of people think I'm a millennial, so I talk with a lot of millennials because I'm mindful that that generation is totally different from us. You know, we're very we like stability, professionalism. That generation behind us, they're very fluid in how they work. They have this type of grind culture that looks a little bit different from our generation. And I just want to know what other issues speak to our generation and their generation.
So the book is really about preserving, defending, and protecting our democracy so that we can move towards a diverse and inclusive and equitable country. As you all well know, we're still in the throes of racial discrimination in this country, and that's what the Trump administration has largely been about in terms of trying to roll back immigration, trying to find any way that they can to actually depress the ability of white Americans to be educated about the Black American experience, for example. I don't know if your listening audience knows, but several weeks ago, Donald Trump signed an executive order banning all federal agencies and any company that does business with federal agencies from doing diversity, equity, and inclusion training. I don't know if you know, but currently on Capitol Hill, there is a senator, his name is Tom Cotton, who has a bill out to ban schools from using a curriculum based on the 1619 Project. Did you all read the 1619 Project in the New York Times, which was an excellent piece about how African Americans were brought over to this country in 1619 and how we built this country and how we built every aspect of this country and how we've been treated. And they don't want the American people to become knowledgeable about the history of this country, the real history of this country, the inclusive history of this country. And so they have gone to extraordinary lengths, not just to ban immigration from predominantly Black and brown countries, but also to try to, basically keep people from learning about our history and in a way that can activate them to become, conscious citizens that are welcoming of all people. They are leading an effort to turn back the hands of time 100 years. And that effort is designed to re-rig the economy, if you will, re-rig society in a way that continues to persistently disadvantage Black and brown people and women. They want to keep the politics of supremacy supreme. And, you know, he even hired some white supremacists in the White House, including Steve Bannon and some others, Steve Miller. And so now, you know, we've got to get a handle on not just getting Donald Trump literally ousted from the White House, but we've got to get a handle on recapturing the public square, making it unacceptable to be in the incivility to be unacceptable. We've got to basically not just demand our human rights. We have to make it non-negotiable. So, you know, everything from, you know, what's happened, the executions on street corners and on roadsides by agents of the state, police officers of primarily Black men in this country. That's got to be front and center in any new administration in terms of what they do. And fortunately, we have, you know, a vice president-elect who has experience in this area with regards to pushing legislation, but also with regards to our criminal justice system. I hope that they make that a priority, front and center. So there are a lot of different things that, you know, Elijah, you know, uplifted in the book, including the fact of why we need to defend our democracy. And he firmly believed that it's the only form and system of government that would have allowed what happened in his lifetime to happen again. And that is with him and John Lewis and people like Ruth Bader Ginsburg. They were on the margins of society. They were the bottom of the bottom. You know, they went to separate and unequal schools. They couldn't go into stores. They couldn't try on clothes. They couldn't do anything. They couldn't drink out of water fountains. They couldn't sit anywhere in the movie theater. And they knew through the power of protest, through the power of uplifting their voices, through the power of assembly, through the power of all of the protected 5 freedoms in the Constitution, that they could challenge the system to make a more perfect union and change the laws in a way that it could actually benefit more people. And so now our generation has to actually, unfortunately, get back on that bandwagon and demand and push and push and push to make life better for other people, but more importantly, and most importantly, for our children.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Thank you for that.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of information you shared there.
There was in chapter 6 of the book, we have, it's titled Trump's Twitter Attack on Baltimore. Talk about how that really impacted Elijah and the community of Baltimore.
So Elijah was demoralized by it, saddened by it, hurt by it, actually, very hurt. It took him back. I think it took him back to a time in this country where African Americans were summarily degraded on a daily basis by some of the highest people in holding the offices in the land. And it hurt him that the president of these United States of America would lob a personal attack against him, but also the city of Baltimore, treating this city, a great storied American city, as if it were not even within the United States of America, and denigrating its residents who are predominantly Black in the process. And so, you know, we were actually, I should just tell you that it wasn't just the president, you know, there were all kinds of attacks coming our way, death threats to me and to him. There were, we had a break-in just hours before, you know, the president started tweeting, which we don't think was a coincidence. It was not a coincidence. The timing was not coincidental. There were all kinds of attacks coming. That Elijah's personal medical records were compromised, being sent to Republicans on Capitol Hill. So, you know, it was a freaking mess, and all of it has yet to be revealed. But these people are absolutely corrupt to their core, and they need to get the hell out. And so when I say that I am so proud of all of the people who turned out in this country to vote these people out of office, I've got to tell you, we are better than this, but we've got to demand that they do what's right by us.
We did turn out in large numbers, but you know, sadly to say, 72 million still supported this presidency, and maybe not so much the presidency, but the ideology. So let's talk about that as our guest and my co-host. What does that look like for America going forward when, yes, we need to be on the cusp of change. We are on the cusp of change with the new administration that will take office January 21st. But we still are living in a country who seems to want to shift to the way it was. And so when I read Elijah Cummings' book, We're Better Than This, how are we going to show up as Americans who voted for change against the backdrop of 72 million people who want it the way it was?
Sis, before you do that, Rev, can I ask this question?
You can.
Because it's like, why, I don't know, why do you all think that they are where they are? Like, what do you think the fear is for us to move forward? I'm just curious about having that conversation. What do you all think the fear is in moving forward, or embracing immigrants, or um embracing diversity? What do you think the glue is? Like, what's keeping them from
Well,
acceptance?
I would say number one, the fear is that they will no longer have the power that they have, and they'll actually have to compete on a level playing ground. The fear is that they will have no control over their lives, but also, if you look, you know how people have in their houses those safe rooms that no one can get into? They've been doing that since the days of enslavement. And so if you really want to look at it, they're afraid that if they lose the power and control that they now wield, that we will do the same thing to them that they have been doing to us.
Thank
And I
you
just,
so much for that. Oh, and I'm sorry, right after Reverend Rochella Cunningham, RR, one that had her hand raised. I think she wanted to jump in there, and then I will hear from Dr. Maya.
No, I just wanted to agree with what he just said. I was just in agreement. Completely in agreement.
Okay.
It's a fear of retaliation.
Okay.
Fear.
Dr. Cummings, let it rip.
not just a fear of retaliation, but a fear of annihilation. Because I mean, literally, you all have to pick up Caste by Isabel Wilkerson. It really is a great book. And towards the end of the book, she really talks about the politics of superiority, white supremacy, and what it does to these people psychologically.
Mhm.
That they come to equate their superiority with their very identity. And any examples of of excellence and success amongst the groups that they have defined as less than, they have to stamp it out.
Yeah.
They have to figure out a way to change the system so that they can never see these examples, because it's a psychological threat to their worldview and their well-being, their mental and psychological well-being. And so, they're the very core of their identity, and it's including, their economic stability. They're threatened by that because they're going to have to work harder and compete harder. But also their psychological stability is threatened. And many of them aren't prepared to deal with a future where, where the decks aren't actually rigged in their favor.
Yeah, and there's also Dr. Frances Welsing, who speaks to the same thing that has a lot to do with who they are as a people, and the fact that really our persons, our family, our sisters, our siblings, and they are, because we all come from one creation, are in the minority. But they have managed to tell the story of Black and Brown people being in the minority so that they can unleash this power and control. So it's an identity crisis for many persons of European descent, and it's ingrained. It's ingrained in all of our systems. It's ingrained in our theology, and it's designed specifically to do what it's doing, and that is to keep a certain group of people in power over another group of people, and that group of people who are in numbers across this world, we are more than. So, just deepening that sense of insecurity and instability is another reason for the why. And it really does play right into your question, the question that I asked, Melissa. So it's a very good and grounding question to put before us, asking the why.
So I guess my very practical answer is, I believe it started at home. We begin teaching our youth our history that we know. We begin the affirmations that our children and our family need to hear. And I'm speaking all generations, because from our silent generation, those are in their 70s and 80s, and those who are in elementary school, there's still a lot of disconnect with what the interpretation is of what's happening here. When we see abuse, murder, and disenfranchisement amongst our people. So I believe we start at home. And as a preacher, I think it's time for some of us preachers and theologians to check these evangelists that are still using the Bible the way persons of European descent used it against our ancestors. And it's time out for that. We have too many silent, I'm going to say mega preachers, too many silent preachers who have, as some people would say, clout in their community, who are still just avoiding talking about race, talking about sexuality, talking about anything that makes people feel left out or forgotten or separate. So I think it's a good opportunity for us to just, I don't know, it's time to check these preachers. It's time to check them, and also let people know who are in these churches that don't affirm all of who they are. So I'm a social justice minister, so to leave and get out. And it's important for us to remind them and bring books like this to our Bible studies, bring conversations like this to our church that is not separate from youth, because that's a whole nother thing. We have churches that get together, then they have a youth church, and they have this. I think it's time for us to get together so we can hear the needs of other people who haven't been able to ask questions, to talk about these topics. And it's important for us to bring all of this together, because there are so many intersections of this. As a same gender loving woman, we're always trying to fight for our trans siblings. They're getting abused and murdered too. The Black and brown people in our community that aren't, well, the persons of that aren't persons of African descent, our brown folk, our Native Americans, our Latinas and Latinos. I've heard language now that they don't like Latinx. So just being mindful of language that separates people. So it's time now for us church folk us pastors who aren't afraid to talk to these I don't know. That's the best way.
Sometimes they say the word, right? Evangelicals. It's
Yeah,
evangelicals. So
conservative
when
evangelicals.
it just doesn't come out. Yeah. Well, they've made it, which is sad to say, because evangelism does not mean what they have.
Exactly. That's why it's hard to call them
They
that.
have made it a political ideology, and they have sanctioned really a white supremacist notion of what God looks like. And so when we read the books that are out there to counter act that, we run up against, as you say, some of our own churches who push back. So those of us who are social justice, and this show is a social justice show, it's a womanist show that speaks to the needs of equality, inclusivity of everyone. And so, we get after it by bringing tough topics to the surface and allowing persons to be able to respond to us via chat or other means, so that we can really dig deep into why this country is so fractured. And
Yeah,
as
but
you
yeah.
and as you stated, Melissa, we are we are fractured. And I see that Reverend Janet wants to jump in there. So please join us in that conversation. Come on in.
Well, thank you all. A couple of things. When we look at, first of all, let me back up to something that Reverend Melissa said as you relate to the youth and the children. When we don't need to expect people that don't look like us to come into our communities to be our saviors. We have to save ourselves, and it starts at home. We have to educate young mothers and fathers so that they can educate their children. So it's okay for you to go to school with your hair natural. It's okay for you to have friends that you love, that look like you and the same sex like you. It's okay. We have to teach our children it's okay to be authentic in who you are and whose you are. And then the other side of that same coin is that churches, and I've had numerous heated discussions with pastors that are male African American pastors about the necessity of mirroring and merging religion and politics, religion and sexuality in your church ministries. And they have told me on numerous occasions over the 20 some years I've been in ministry, Reverend Garner Mullins, there is no place in my church. And I have to say, excuse me, last time I checked, it was not your church. They voted you in, but it's not your church. Yes, it is. I said, well, we're going to agree to disagree respectfully, but go ahead, Pastor. And I've heard them say that their church is about helping people know God and not about that foolishness out there in the community about politics. And so my response was, do the people live here in the church 24/7? Well, no, they don't. Well, then they live out into the world. So you need to equip them to be able to deal with what's going on in the world. And so when you have pastors that are male pastors, and I can only speak for the Baptist denomination because I've been Baptist and Black all my life. So I can't speak of other denominations. But when you have Baptist ministers that have that closed mindset that women are there to be the help, the missionaries, Sunday school, they can't be at the table to be the deacon, they can't be at the table to be the pastor, but they can come in and take the notes. And I have been in meetings where I've come in there and they looked at me and said, Reverend Garner Mullins, are you taking notes? I said, for me? And they're like, well, who's taking notes for the minutes? I said, well, Deacon so-and-so over there talking to such and such, he can take the minutes. And so after I make an appointment with the pastor and let him know, don't expect when a woman comes in the room that she's supposed to take the minutes, that she's supposed to be the help. We need to be at the table and we need to stand up, speak up, that we are equipped, fearfully and wonderfully made, lacking nothing, and we should be there. But we have to start with our young people, our young daughters. And that is why when I am talking about the God of Abraham, I also say the God of Sarah, and the God of Isaac, and the God of Rebecca, and the God of Jacob, Leah, and Rachel. Because I want the sisters to know and the young girls to know in the congregation that there is a God for them as well.
Okay. Thank
Thank
you
you.
so much. I think Lafayette had his hands up, and then we're going to allow Dr. Maya Cummings, who has been our gracious guest and would love to have her come back, give us closing comments. Lafayette?
Unmute.
changing subject a little bit. I wanted to discuss, because as a minister, you know, we preach forgiveness. We preach forgiveness. But when it comes to these people that voted for Trump, all 70 million of them, you know, that were basically voting for our oppression, voting for my oppression. If you ask me, I don't have any friends that separate families. I don't have any friends that put kids in cages. And so how are y'all dealing with the forgiveness aspect of the Trump supporters?
So you know that's another whole show.
As far as I'm concerned, our side won. So as far as I'm concerned, it's not about forgiving them. It's about moving forward and setting the terms of the table and the parameters for the new political reality, and making sure that in the future that we continue to run a Boston on the system, whether that is running for office, maximizing our votes, making sure that we are advocating, we are in the halls of these, all of these positions of power, where we're making our agenda known and demanding that these politicians respond to our needs. Now it's not about kowtowing to them, as far as I'm concerned, and this is now about taking our community to the next level of political sophistication so that we can drive our agenda and be safe in this country and prosperous and thrive. And so with that, that is why I mentioned earlier about putting guardrails around the public square. We've got to find a way. Donald Trump took the lid off the Pandora's box of hate. We have got to find a way to, if we can't put that lid back on, we've got to find a way to put guardrails around it so it can't infect our dialogue, our ability to be civil, our ability for our children to be safe, etc. And so I think that that's upon us as the winners to focus on what we want to legislate, what we want to practice, what we want to mandate to actually get us to a point where where our humanity is not questioned. It's not a political issue. It's not a political opinion. We are all human beings created in the glory of God, and that is a non-negotiable factor. Now, I just want to end by saying, Reverend Melissa McQueen Simmons, that several years ago, I created this term called inclusion revolution. And I believe that, because any population group, you see discrimination within the African-American community, you hear people talking about trans, LGBTQ, within the Muslim community, you can hear the same things. I mean, literally, we discriminate against each other on a daily basis. If we expect anyone to respect our humanity, we've got to respect the humanity of others. And that means that, all of this, slicing and dicing and I'm better than you and you're not and this and that has got to go. The only way we can rise, the only way we can all be safe, the only way we can all thrive is when we respect the humanity and the dignity of all human beings. And so with that, I think that what we're here at this moment in the dawn of a new America, this is what I'm going to call this. It's time for us to rise, and we only rise by making sure that we are being inclusive.
Thank you so much for those closing comments. Dr. Maya, you speak so much of the womanist context. We appreciate you being here with us today. If you have not purchased the book, we invite that you go out and you find the copy of We're Better Than This. It's a good read for the Christmas and Thanksgiving holiday. So if you can see it, I'm not sure if you're able to see it, but please get it and read it. We are on the second and fourth Friday of the month. So we look forward to having you back. Also, I have one of my sisters on the show who was not able to get in her words or comment, but she too has a show called Women Seeking Wisdom. It will be aired Facebook Live this evening. And we are on that show talking about the right to life and what that looks like. And so it doesn't sound like what it it isn't what it sounds like. So we invite you to come and join us. I want to thank my guest again, Dr. Maya Cummings, for coming on and talking about this wonderful book. We hope that you would join us again to talk more about the book and more about the work that you're doing as you are making us more aware of why we need to be more inclusive and how we need to start at home. I want to thank Sonia Cummings, Reverend Rochella Cunningham, want to thank Lafayette Jefferson, and we want to thank Reverend Janet Garland Mullins and my ride or die partner, Reverend Melissa McQueen Simmons, as we continue to bring you interesting dialogue and we continue to work this Facebook Live till we get it right. Have a great weekend. We have 1 minute so everybody can say bye or whatever, but we promised you a 1 full hour and not more. So thank you so much for joining us today.
I had a question for Dr. Cummings. She referenced a book by Isabel Wilkerson. Was it entitled Lois Cast? Was that the name of it?
It's CASTE, Cast.
CAST, Cast.
And my book is coming out next summer. It's called Rageism.
Okay, well then
be on the lookout for that.
Yeah. You need to come back to discuss that with us. Thank you again so much. Have a wonderful day. Look forward to having you join us in the next airing. God bless.
Peace.
And happy Thanksgiving. Well, no, happy day off. That's Indigenous Day. We're not going to name that like that. Can I say it like that? Yes.
You can say it like you want.
I did. Enjoy the meal and feast around family. Be safe as you do that. And remember, if you're in Georgia, go vote.
Or register.
And go vote. Take care, everybody.
Peace.
I feel laughing at us. In the live.
I did. And let's end the recording. Wait, end the recording.